everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Zero, the MC who only loves Demi-Human Girls Chapter 133 to 140, The Calamity of Wallachia is a group that threatens the world. The witch cult has committed crimes almost everywhere. In the Wallachia Empire, the most notorious Archbishop of Sin is the Archbishop of Sin of Pride. Just like other Archbishops of Sin, almost no one knows their specific appearance, only their general characteristics. A warrior skilled with multiple weapons, especially swordsmanship. Unlike the kingdom of Lugnica, the number of Mabiasts in the Wallachia Empire is very scarce. It is almost impossible to see swarms of Mabiasts, like Natsuki Subaru did in the forest of the Roswell domain. After the army was wiped out several times, the Empire's high command dispatched corresponding combat forces, but due to the chaotic internal situation, they did not achieve very good results. Fortunately, Fiona had no intention of staying here for long, and after the Wallachia Empire learned that this god of slaughter had left, they began to deal with internal affairs, and no longer concerned themselves with Fiona's issues. And now, having experienced a fierce battle at the High Tower, Fiona broke free from Pandora's control, and incidentally transferred everyone to a safe location. It is just that Natsuki Subaru, as the protagonist, was transported to the Wallachia Empire due to some force majeure. Perhaps he prefers to get close to a certain axe wielder. Where is this? Fiona came to her senses and found the protagonist high in the sky, with clouds even flying past him. The sound of rushing wind rang in Fiona's ears. Having lost count of how many times she had fallen, Fiona naturally had no particular reaction. If I misuse the command block, I'll probably be found by that guy again. Rumble. Fortunately, Fiona also intended to minimize her impact, and did not land hard directly, but instead took out a bucket of water and placed it where she would land. At this moment, Fiona was still wearing the robe she used to shield herself from the sand and wind in the dunes, and her Book of the Dead was at her waist. The army camp not far away successfully caught Fiona's attention. Sword Wolf Emblem. The Wallachia Empire. Round and round, I'm back again. Gulp. A somewhat stiff swallowing sound rang out beside Fiona, as a small figure tried hard to hide her presence. Yo Meili Portrout, you're here too. To Fiona's surprise, she hadn't expected Meili Portrout to be transported here as well. Perhaps because of Fiona's interference, the plot had deviated. Originally, the only people transported were Natsuki Subaru, Rem, and Lewis, but now Fiona and Meili Portrout were added to the mix. In that case, I'll have to discipline you properly. Bad children who have been taught the wrong things won't do. Meili Portrout was lifted up by the back of her collar by Fiona without question. Because the speed was a bit too fast, Meili Portrout was still spinning around in a daze. Everything that just happened was too sudden. Meili Portrout herself did not have any outstanding combat power, and when Fiona was playing the peak match, Meili Portrout only saw a general outline. Compared to when she was in Natsuki Subaru's hands, Meili Portrout's behavior now was unusually obedient, perhaps because she felt like she had returned to the life she had back then with the Gut Hunter. In short, nothing had really changed. They were both women with exaggerated combat power. As for their identities and such, it wasn't very important. Fiona wasn't the type of person who liked violence, right? Probably. Can you put me down? Meili Portrout asked timidly. Sorry, I forgot, my apologies. I'm not a monster, so you don't need to be too nervous. At least you don't have to worry about safety. Fiona put Meili Portrout down and patted her head to soothe her. Speaking of the Wallachia Empire, I remember that demi-humans and humans are quite equal here, and they aren't very good at magic or anything. Fiona tried her best to recall information about this place. Because of some messy traditions, the successors to the throne kill each other during the succession. What a stupid succession system. Fiona revealed her right hand. In survival mode, her situation was not optimistic, but it wouldn't worsen. There were too many problems now. She would have to deal with them one by one. So Fiona decided to take Meili Portrout and move in the opposite direction of the army camp. With a child by her side, fighting and killing really wasn't appropriate. Big Sister Fiona. I hope it's okay to call you that. Do you know this place well? Era, I know it quite well. For some reason, I've experienced the local customs here. Anyway, it's fine to just call me Fiona. I'll take care of you for now. Fiona casually patted her chest. If you didn't consider their identities, the current scene looked like a sisterly outing. Something seemed to be happening in the forest on the horizon, and Fiona's plan naturally wouldn't be realized so easily. Like Natsuki Subaru. Return by death activated. Hoo, as expected, Fiona had returned to the high sky again. Is Rem not here? Or did we get separated? Why did Natsuki Subaru die so quickly? Dealing with Pandora and cleaning off the residue of the Witch of Envy left on her body were issues for later. Before she helped Natsuki Subaru deal with the problem in front of him, Fiona probably couldn't go anywhere. So where are we going? Meili Portroute asked Fiona cautiously. Since we're here, shouldn't we experience the local customs? Look, aren't they having a picnic over there? Let's go over too. Meili Portroute. Because the army here hoped to negotiate with the Shudrak in the forest, they were stationed here. Fiona, arriving as a third-party force, naturally quickly attracted the attention of others. A scout soon appeared in front of Fiona. If it were just two women, it would be easy to make people underestimate them, not to mention that Meili Portroute was just a child. And Fiona also looked half-paralyzed. Era, a scout. I was discovered already. There's really no helping it, they react so quickly. But didn't we not use any camouflage? And there are almost no Mabiasts nearby, so I'm afraid Meili Portroute is of no help here. Meili Portroute whispered beside Fiona. At least Meili Portroute had learned quite a few assassination techniques while beside Elsa. She had also demonstrated camouflage in the village, and Natsuki Subaru had been tricked by her at the time. Hey, woman, who are you? Come with us to the army camp first. Don't put up any useless resistance, we can't entertain a young lady. As he spoke, the scout had already arrived in front of Fiona. 130 for Chapter 130 for Black Lich Chapter 134, Black Lich. What an ugly title that is. It seemed the Wallachia soldiers in the camp did not take Fiona Argyle and Meili Portroute seriously. In short, it's a dangerous existence that wandered the wilderness years ago. Even if an army encountered her, they would only face total annihilation. Because scouts had discovered outsiders, they immediately sought out one of the leaders currently in the military camp, who was also the person who met Natsuki Subaru in the original story Todd. His most famous titles: number 1 Natsuki Subaru fan, excellent axeman, and genius of fountain camping. Then why is it called a lich? Is it a mage? Meili Portroute asked from the side. That's not it. We aren't clear on her specific appearance, only that whenever she appears, shrill screeches emerge, just like a lich or a magic beast, along with traces of black erosion. Todd led the two to a military tent. Although to Todd, the two did not seem to pose much of a threat, necessary interrogation was still required. So, where are you from? A critically ill young woman. A little girl. Fiona Argyle was an undead herself, and on top of being entangled by the Witch of Envy, her aura was weak. Those with sensitive perception would only assume Fiona Argyle was a patient with a serious illness. Just lost travelers. Right now, we just want to find our companions. Fiona Argyle replied. Because Fiona Argyle had lost the gospel, her sense of direction trait made it impossible for her to easily find Natsuki Subaru's location. So you're saying there's more than just the two of you? A strange light flickered in Todd's eyes. The appearance of unidentified people in the army was a very sensitive matter. Not to mention the number might not be small. A scout team. An assassination squad. Every possibility flashed through Todd's mind, but the aura on Fiona Argyle could not be faked, the frailty at the base of her life must be real. Regarding Fiona Argyle's frankness, Maylie Portrout appeared somewhat uneasy. Even Elsa the Gut Hunter, who had long been famous in the world as a killer, would not easily expose her intentions in an army. How many people? Todd had almost shifted into an interrogation tone. Under Todd's signal, a guard nearby had already stood at the entrance to prevent any accidents. There should be 3 more, I think. One is a black-haired boy, one is a blue-haired young woman, and another is a yellow-haired little girl about the same age as this child. The young woman before Todd seemed slow to react, directly revealing her teammates' information completely. Meanwhile, Maylie Portrout seemed to already know something, looking at Todd before her as if looking at a dead man. Oh my, oh my. So have you seen them? Or is there any information that could help us? In short, it would be good if it could reduce some of our confusion. Fiona Argyle smiled, while the axe in the hands of the Todd before her flashed with a cold light. By the way, I still don't know your names. Fiona Argyle, as if fulfilling a long-cherished wish, Fiona Argyle let out a long sigh, and even the aura on her body became much more relaxed. Oh my, oh my. This child is named Maylie Portrout. I can be considered her guardian for now. In any case, this child still needs some training. Is that so? I haven't heard of the Argyle family. Although Fiona Argyle's aura was weak, the presence on her body truly could not be concealed. The clean and crisp movements and tone of a sword fighter made Todd guess Fiona Argyle's identity. That's right. Our family is just a small family, obscure wherever we are. Then, you came here too. Oh my, oh my. So have you seen where they are? If we were to look for them ourselves, it would be too blind. If there were some clues, then we could. Fiona Argyle interrupted Todd's questioning, seemingly completely unaware of her own situation, just like a young lady pampered in her family. Pride. A word inexplicably appeared in the hearts of the Wallachia soldiers present. In an empire where the strong were respected, Fiona Argyle's behavior greatly reduced Todd's patience. Anyway, I still have quite a few things to be busy with right now. It's rare to be able to speak freely without worrying about people behind my back attacking me. I'm asking if you even understand the situation. Veins popped out on Todd's forehead. The killing intent of a soldier was almost overflowing. Todd's axe slammed onto the table, right next to Fiona Argyle's right hand. Wood chips splattered, blocking the light in front of Fiona Argyle's eyes. Fiona Argyle looked at her own reflection on the sharp axe. Oh my, oh my. Has it not been maintained for too long? Why does it look so old? Fiona Argyle rubbed her face with her right hand, completely ignoring Todd's anger. Clack! Todd pulled out his axe. Dust on the table splattered, and the sharp axe whistled in the air. Todd reversed the axe and attacked Fiona Argyle with the axe back. Oh my, oh my. You've lost your patience already. You haven't asked anything useful at all. By the way, judging by the situation, they probably haven't arrived here yet. Fiona Argyle stood up and easily caught Todd's attack. Even without using the command block, Fiona Argyle was an invincible existence in the military camp. This was also the reason Fiona Argyle acted this way. Who on earth are you? Terrified, Todd immediately retreated. Fiona Argyle's aura changed abruptly in an instant. A continuous stream of death aura surged from Fiona Argyle's body, and the light around Fiona Argyle began to distort. A sword fighter? A traitor? One of the witch cult archbishops? The Witch of Pride? There are too many titles I could be crowned with. In any case, I still prefer you to call me Fiona. As Fiona Argyle pressed forward step by step, the soldiers, including Todd, retreated one after another until Fiona Argyle and Maylie Portrout left the military tent together. Oh my, oh my. I remember now, you all seem to call me. What was it, a lich? Wooya. Fiona Argyle answered Todd's question with a smile. The moment her words fell, a massive white beast appeared in the clouds, and a continuous stream of black mist poured down. The black mist, representing death, instantly shrouded the military camp, and not even a whale had time to escape. And Natsuki Subaru clearly did not have time to discover the anomaly here, because just as Fiona Argyle summoned the white whale to clear out the military camp, Natsuki Subaru had already activated Return by Death. Chapter 135, Beast of Evil. Ochi-Yi, the white giant beast soared in the sky, pale tentacles spreading from its abdomen, and black mist seemed to divide the world like a curtain. Era, I can't find him at all. Where could he have gone? Fiona stopped with Meili Port route at the boundary between the hills and the forest. In the plot, the location where Natsuki Subaru crossed over was next to the forest, but given the sheer size of the forest before her, Fiona could not determine his exact location. Meili Port route, do you have any better ideas? Fiona asked Meili Port route, who was beside her. It was clear that Meili Port route had not yet recovered from everything that had happened in the military camp. What is it? Are we looking for someone? Meili Port route watched as the white whale soaring in the sky disappeared completely into the black mist. The military camp had been dealt with for the most part, and Fiona's time was limited. She didn't have to deal with the camp herself. In any case, the white whale was the most suitable for the job. Why does Fiona think that Natsuki Subaru must have come too? Meili Portrait's question stumped Fiona. If the plot had deviated, then Natsuki Subaru might not have come, and the time of his death would have been in a different location. Wait a moment. Fiona opened the Book of the Dead in her hand. Natsuki Subaru's situation was similar to Fiona's. Both of their deaths were recorded in the Book of the Dead. The simplest way to observe Natsuki Subaru's situation, besides teleporting directly, was to view his approximate return point through the Book of the Dead. Are we not going to continue forward? Seeing that Fiona wasn't moving forward, Meili Port route simply sat down on the grass nearby. Next time. Meili Port route couldn't understand the characters in Fiona's book, and of course, Fiona couldn't read either. Fiona just wanted to know where Natsuki Subaru's soul had returned from the other side. Return by Death activated. Encountering Meili Port route. Natsuki Subaru should be in the forest. He must have been reckless, encountered traps, demon beasts, and soldiers of Wallachia, and died violently. Era, how pathetic. Fiona estimated the time. Natsuki Subaru's situation was much better now than in the original plot. At least Rem wasn't a burden, and that alone was enough. With one of Rem's healing spells, the residents of Shudrak were almost treating her like a treasure. Very good. Let's change direction. It shouldn't be too difficult for Natsuki Subaru to deal with the problems in front of him. Even the Archbishop of Sin was no match for him, so could there really be anyone else who could almost solo Natsuki Subaru? If that were the case, their strength would at least be on the level of an Archbishop of Sin, right? Wouldn't you agree? Todd and the Archbishop of Sin agreed. Where are we going? The nearest city-state. Since this is an adventure, the goal is to find suitable weapons. If I remember correctly, the city-state is called Geralt. Fiona flipped through the Book of the Dead in her hand. Of course, I also need to educate you properly, Meili Port route. In short, the bad habits you picked up elsewhere need to be changed. The killing and fighting need to be reined in. Meili Port route, who had originally been raised by beasts, was then raised by Elsa. Under the upbringing of a perverted assassin, it would be a miracle if Meili Portrait's values were upright. Then in what direction should I change? A beastier girl. The species is wrong, that's just a willful approach. Meili Port route protested. How could that be? Meili Port route, you'd be perfectly suited for it. Look, you can get along with cute little animals. Just as Fiona and Meili Port route were talking, scouts from the military camp surrounded them, but their words were directly ignored by Fiona. I generally don't engage in killing. This kind of meaningless killing is too tiring. Isn't it better to save your energy? Era, if you ask what I'm saving my energy for. Naturally, it's for killing. Black shadows instantly appeared behind Fiona, and Meili port route. The scouts in front of them didn't even have time to react before they were struck by the black mist and completely vanished from the world. The white whale, which had roamed the world for 100 years, had its combat power greatly increased after being upgraded by Fiona. An ordinary army could absolutely not be its opponent. Of course, the situation in the Wallachia Empire was somewhat different from that in Lugnica. The Wallachia Empire's army had fewer mages and mainly relied on crystal weapons. Just as Fiona was leaving with Meili port route, the white whale had already begun to clear out the nearby military camp. It didn't even need any reason, Fiona was just doing it to accelerate the progress of Natsuki Subaru's plot. On the other side. Is that a demon beast? Natsuki Subaru, having encountered the bandaged weirdo in the forest, said in surprise. No one could ignore a creature of such massive size. The white whale. It's Fiona. The white whale. Abel said, somewhat startled. In this country where demon beasts were extremely rare, the appearance of the white whale, one of the 3 great demon beasts, was indeed enough to warrant attention. By the way, according to what you mean, is the current farce related to someone you know? Abel's words caused Natsuki Subaru to start brainstorming. Natsuki Subaru was currently alone, and Rem had most likely entered the forest during the teleportation. Natsuki Subaru had died several times trying to find Rem, and now he had finally made some progress. What should I do? If I answer directly, will it make the situation worse? The current situation is very unfavorable for me, my whip is completely unusable here. Natsuki Subaru was well aware of his own combat strength. If he got into a conflict in such an unfamiliar place where he didn't know anyone, Natsuki Subaru would most likely end up dead. I do know her, but I can't say we're friends or anything like that. Looking at it now, it's more likely that she's an enemy. Natsuki Subaru said conservatively. After all, demon beasts were viewed as disasters everywhere, even in the Wallachia Empire. Is that so? If you want to go into the forest to find your friend, then heading to the Shudrak people is most likely the right move. Abel offered his opinion. As one of the figures at the center of the vortex in the Wallachia Empire, he also needed enough power to satisfy his ambition. Winning over the Shudrak people was a good choice, and Natsuki Subaru in front of him was the best reason for him to enter that place. In short, gaining their approval should be enough. Rumble, what's wrong? The sudden rumbling sound made Natsuki Subaru freeze. Immediately after, Natsuki Subaru saw the huge demon beast arrive not far from him, and the fleeing Wallachia soldiers were rushing toward the forest. Behind them was the pursuing white whale. It looks like the plan needs to be sped up. It would be best if your friend's little pet doesn't notice us. 136 Chapter 136 Encounter in Garel City Chapter 136 Encounter at Garel City. Eventually, Natsuki Subaru found Rem, who had been separated from him, in the hands of the Shudrak people in the forest. The Shudrak people's test for outsiders was quite simple and brutal. It was just throwing them in to fight a magic beast one-on-one. This was simply not worth mentioning in front of Natsuki Subaru, who had Rem with him. That was close. I thought it would be something like the white whale or the great rabbit, or at the very least, those magic beasts in the sand dunes. Natsuki Subaru watched the snake-type magic beast being easily crushed by Rem. In the Forest of Mathers, a demonized Rem could wipe out the vast majority of magic beasts. And in the Wallachia Empire, the main reason why magic beasts are considered difficult to deal with is that the disparity in combat power is too severe. In Natsuki Subaru's view, magic is almost everywhere in Lugnica, but it is relatively rare in the Wallachia Empire. If we compare it to previous trials, the current challenge really made Rem let her guard down a bit. The blue-haired maid shook the flail in her hand, and after coordinating with ice magic, the battle ended in an instant. Anyway, that should mean we passed, right? After obtaining the chieftain's permission, Natsuki Subaru and the others were brought out of the trial grounds. As an aside, the Shudrak people are almost all female. To give birth to newborns, they only abduct males from the outside world and release them after having children. You are a very powerful young lady. May I ask, why do you follow a guy who has absolutely no combat ability? In the Wallachia Empire, strength is respected, so everyone could not understand Rem's clinging behavior. There is no why. Because Natsuki Subaru is Rem's hero. This was promised. And it is something that cannot be changed no matter what. Rem's words surprised everyone, but there were still many things to deal with in the current situation. For example, the able before them Natsuki Subaru learned that his true identity was actually the Emperor of Wallachia. So, the culprit who swept through the Imperial Army camp is your friend, then. Abel sat to the side wearing a mask. Natsuki Subaru, having just arrived, had no idea about the situation here, and neither did Rem, while Louis was cast aside by Natsuki Subaru out of disdain. After learning her true identity, Rem also kept a close watch on this child whose brain had been broken from a bump. Anyway, the situation is complicated. It is best if we are careful about meeting her, otherwise, she will be our enemy. An enemy? Abel speculated about the Fiona whom Natsuki Subaru mentioned. Relying on his knowledge, Abel regarded Fiona as something like a spirit user. If we bypass that magic beast, would it be possible to subdue her? Natsuki Subaru, Rem. Alright, it seems that won't work. Abel saw what the two meant. It is not that I am dampening everyone's morale, but if it is Fiona, I fear only the 9 divine generals of Wallachia would be qualified to be her opponents. Very powerful. Yes, powerful. The 2 girls from the Shudrak people chimed in from the side. The girl named Heli seemed to trust Natsuki Subaru more. Then what about her relationship with the Empire? Abel weighed the pros and cons. A qualified politician would not only see danger but also opportunity, and these 2 things are highly likely to exist simultaneously. As it appears now, it is highly likely to be hostile. The White Whale under Fiona's command easily dealt with the Wallachia Empire's army. This is not much different from starting a war. In that case, you should head to the nearest city-state. Abel stood up. Natsuki Subaru's goal was to leave this place and meet up with Emilia and the others, so finding a direction and preparing for the journey was the right thing to do. And the nearest walled city, Geralt, was Natsuki Subaru's best choice. Is that so? Thank you. Natsuki Subaru did not think much of it. Right now, he only felt panicked. If Fiona were to repeat her actions in Watergate City, he feared he would be stuck in this save file of Wallachia forever. Rem seemed to sense that something was wrong, but since it was Natsuki Subaru's decision, Rem did not refuse. Geralt City, the second-class general of the city, Dicker, was the highest-ranking officer here. Since a few days ago, he had learned the news that the army station near the forest had been almost completely wiped out. Rumors of a lich. Magic beasts. Dicker did not underestimate the enemy because of some rumors. He had made ample preparations within the city long ago. However, the imperial capital was reluctant to send reinforcements in response to the request for help here, choosing instead to wait and see. The city walls were towering. Dicker could almost see the other side of the horizon. The empty land even made Dicker feel that this was a baseless farce. Having experience dealing with Otto, Natsuki Subaru quickly got along with the merchant siblings here, and subsequently blended into the city-state. Speaking of which, what is going on today? Why are the people in the city so nervous? Is there some major event? Natsuki Subaru asked Philip, the older brother. I heard there was an attack. An attack? Is it an army? Rem said with some surprise. To make a whole city so jittery, it would at least have to be an army or something similar. Of course, the witch cult would also suffice. A lich. The younger sister, Medium, answered Rem's question. It looks like the lady is being protected very well. In order to have a reasonable identity, Natsuki Subaru took it upon himself to become husband and wife with Rem. Besides blushing, Rem did not refuse. That hurts, Remington. My finger is not the head of a magic beast, please be gentle. Natsuki Subaru cried out in pain. Anyway, it is the kind of existence that even an army would return in defeat if they encountered it. It has given the Empire a headache for a long time. We plan to leave here soon. Follop's words were not yet finished when a huge sound of wind echoed through the entire city-state. Scree-o! The screech of the giant beast echoed across the land, and 3 desperate figures emerged from the clouds one after another. Enemy attack! In an instant, the alarm sounded throughout the city-state. Natsuki Subaru knew the white whale's ability very well. As a flying entity, the white whale's attacks were also wide-range. If this place were chosen as an attack target by the white whale, who knows how many people would completely disappear? How could this be? Natsuki Subaru. We can't stay here. While speaking, Follop had already hurriedly pulled up his ox cart, but at this moment, the brave ox was still trembling under instinctive pressure. If you don't run, I'll dismember you right now. Medium said, pointing a scimitar at the ox. Having no choice, the ox then ran for its life through the city. Chapter 137 The Minions of Death. Wah! The weapons prepared to deal with the army opened fire in unison, but unfortunately, the white whale high in the sky was beyond the reach of even magic, let alone the siege weapons that were originally designed to stop the siege. Yes, they didn't even need to attack. When their mournful howls echoed throughout the city, the horns of death had already sounded. Aah! The soldiers collapsed and even abandoned their armor and weapons. Black clouds began to shroud the city-state, and birds that came into contact with the white whale's mist were instantly embraced by death. Where are we going? Subaru watched the giant beast in the sky warily. The scene was extremely similar to when he encountered the white whale under the phalag tree. However, the person driving the vehicle in front of him was not Otto, but a businessman that Subaru had met in Wallachia. I don't know, let's just leave here first. Flop expressed his opinion, but the city was in chaos, with pedestrians and vehicles quickly blocking the roads. My brother can't walk at all. Michian watched anxiously as the crowd surged toward refuge and exits from the city-state. Pleiades. Rem tugged at Subaru's sleeve, a little worried, while Subaru had already made up his mind. Rem should understand what I mean. Since he's a defeated opponent, it's only a matter of time before we conquer him again. Even though they hadn't fully appreciated the scenery of the foreign city-state, Subaru stepped forward when everyone encountered difficulties. Perhaps because the current Wallachia hasn't brought Subaru too much suffering, Subaru still identifies with his identity in Lugnica. Rem nodded and then followed Subaru. Where are you going? It's dangerous there. Let's move together for now. Flop called out anxiously to Subaru as he left. Flop had everything behind him, and it seemed unlikely that he would abandon it all under these circumstances. After all, not everyone is like Otto. Thank you, we will try to buy you some time. Subaru waved his hand behind him, and headed towards the location where the white whale had gathered. Black clouds descended like a slanting curtain of rain, threatening to engulf the entire city-state in death in the next moment. The fog of white whale now is not the ordinary white fog of before. The black fog, carrying high temperatures and the wither effect, is enough to annihilate all living beings. This can't go on. Subaru looked at the scene in the distance. He and Rem couldn't possibly reach that far. If only there were a suitable means of transportation. Flop and Michian arrived in a dragon carriage. Why not seek refuge? Subaru asked, somewhat surprised. It's already like this, the garrison is in complete chaos, it doesn't really matter where they are. Since the boss has a plan, then investing all of it is a hope. As expected, a businessman's intuition is sharp. Only one is true. Subaru climbed into the dragon carriage without hesitation, while Rem stood by his side to protect him. So is it enough to just defeat one of them? Will the head of the household be able to identify which one it is? The white whale, now controlled by Fiona, no longer showed the obvious flaws they had when they first met, and they had no intention of coming to the ground. Defeating white whale directly might not be so easy. Looks like we're at a loss. Let's lure the white whale down first. Subaru called out a witch of envy without hesitation, and the scent emanating from him became much stronger. Boom! Suddenly, a strange change occurred in the clouds. Almost simultaneously, 3 white whales began to twist their bodies and attack Subaru. Even though it appears that White Whale has become Fiona's puppet, it still exists as the underlying code of Warcraft. However, Fiona had already achieved her purpose in sending them, so the pursuit of Subaru had no impact. Attention! They're here. Rem summoned a giant ice pillar to block the impact of the first white whale. The ice pillar and the attacks from nearby soldiers forced the white whale to rise to a new height. Cough cough, Subaru seemed to feel pain in his lungs, and a strange burning sensation came from inside his body. The aura emanating from White Whale alone was enough to suffocate him. The second phase boss. Chirp woo. Because the building was blocking the view, Miqian, who was driving the ox cart, did not see the other white whale that had arrived in front of him. Don't even think about getting close. The flail transformed into a cannonball and slammed directly into White Whale's face. Rem's flail dance surprised Flop, but he then genuinely praised Subaru. The boss is truly blessed to have such an outstanding wife. Yes, but that's precisely why I feel a lot of pressure. One of the 3 white whales was besieged by the defending army, while the other was held off by Remington. If that's the case, then the real culprit is. The enormous figure appeared in front of the ox cart in an instant. Miqian had no time to control the ox cart to avoid it, and the ox cart overturned, scattering everyone to the ground. Subaru was absolutely certain that the white whale before him was the white whale in its true form. Over here. Subaru exerted all his strength, and Flop and the others, who hadn't even reacted yet, were almost killed by White Whale's attack. Therefore, Subaru chose to actively lure White Whale away. That's exactly how it looks. Subaru has already experienced so much, and his physical strength has improved considerably. Moreover, the current setting is an urban area, which is naturally an area of human activity that is advantageous to Subaru. For some reason, White Whale did not use the black mist, which gave Subaru an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Once Rem is reached, it can basically be completely resolved. A faint sound rang out, and Subaru didn't even have time to react. The sound of the wind, Flop's voice. The boss is truly blessed to have such an outstanding wife. Subaru stared in astonishment at the scene before him, a bead of sweat trickling down his forehead. Subaru said somewhat uncertainly, "What's wrong, boss?" "There are still enemies." Subaru watched the street flash past him at breakneck speed, and realized that he was only 10 minutes away from death. There was no black mist, and I didn't sense any special aura. What was it? Was it like Shala? Was it a direct beheading? Subaru quickly deduced the reason for his sudden death based on his final moments. "Turn around," Subaru said to Flop. Chapter 138 Master of Separation, Turn Around. Subaru gave the order without hesitation, and Miqian immediately turned the ox cart around. Flop didn't ask any more questions. Since he had chosen to believe Subaru, he wouldn't question him. Now everyone's lives were in Subaru's hands. Just as the ox cart changed direction, the white whale's main body smashed through the house where the ox cart had just been, and the flying mud and bricks nearly buried the ox cart. Pleiades. Rem also noticed the danger Subaru and the others were in, but fortunately Subaru managed to turn the situation around in time. Subaru's response relieved Rem, but White Whale, who was entangled with Rem, also seized on Rem's weakness for a moment. However, the defending forces on the side did not give up completely. A series of explosions occurred on White Whale. Wah! The mournful white whale began to rise, and a putrid smell mixed with sulfur and flames began to spread in the air from the white whale's mouth. Could it be? Subaru's ghostly presence overwhelmed him, and for a moment he couldn't care less about anything else. Stop right now. Woo 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 woo. A rapid, pulse-like sound came from White Whale's mouth. In just a moment, the black mist shot out like a burst of water jets, and the wither effect, aided by the high temperature, spread rapidly throughout the city. Subaru intuitively felt that the whole world had been shrouded in darkness. The black mist pierced through the siege engines on the city wall, and the Imperial army defending against the invasion didn't even have time to dodge before disappearing into the black mist. Get down! Subaru immediately lunged at Flop, who was standing nearby. A huge blast of air struck the oxcart the next moment. Michian struggled to maintain the balance of the oxcart, but eventually had to stop as well. The enormous pupils were lifeless. It was clear that the object before them was inanimate. Subaru and the others were overtaken simply because they had stopped for a moment. Crash bang! The flying flail hurtled towards White Whale, striking him squarely in the face. The immense impact sent White Whale plummeting to the side. Just as promised, the blue-haired maid stayed by Subaru's side. I love you so much, Rem-chan. Subaru gave him a thumbs up without hesitation. This isn't the time for the boss to flirt. Flop dusted himself off and pulled Michian up beside him. Rem couldn't stay by Subaru's side because he had to at least hold off one White Whale. Where will it be? Subaru looked around worriedly. During the chase, he had deliberately moved the oxcart to a more open area because the place where he died the first time was too narrow in terms of visibility. Subaru had no idea what had happened to him. As soon as Flop's voice came, Subaru saw a dark shadow flying towards him from high in the sky. A sharp axe gleaming with white light. Subaru first smelled the blood, a smell he had smelled countless times before. Subaru only saw a sharp axe cleave into his chest. Despite the intense pain, Subaru strained to see the enemy before him, who was dressed as an Imperial Army soldier. But the boss. After much hesitation, Flop helped Michian, who was unconscious from the impact, away. There's no need to waste time with unnecessary words, things are already in complete chaos here. Amid Subaru's screams, the man pulled the axe that was embedded in Subaru's chest. Someone as suspicious as you is bound to attract attention, and to be so close to White Whale, you just wanted to give it a try, but it seems you were wrong. The man said nonchalantly, like a ruthless hunter who showed no hesitation or doubt in dealing with his prey, and acted decisively once he identified his target. You are. Well, there's no point in talking too much with a dead man, but I might catch up with you soon, so a few more words won't hurt, Todd. Return by death activated. Turn around. Subaru did not hesitate to have Michian turn the direction again. Someone in the city is trying to attack us. No, why is this happening? Subaru seemed to have foreseen what was about to happen, and the collapse of the building and the appearance of the White Whale made Flop instantly believe Subaru's words. Pleiades. Rem, watch your back. Almost instantly, Subaru responded to Rem, who swung his flail behind him without hesitation, and White Whale, unaware of what was happening, was struck again. Beautiful, boss. Flop praised, no wonder he has such an outstanding lady by his side. If I could, I wouldn't want to be this outstanding. Flop completely took Subaru's words as a shameless compliment. So what should we do next? Subaru muttered to himself that the current cycle only lasted for a dozen minutes, and that was while being pursued by White Whale, leaving him without even basic combat strength. Todd is lurking in the shadows, eyeing Subaru with predatory intent. If given the chance, Subaru might try to persuade Todd, who wants his head. However, the current situation seems unlikely. Subaru and Todd have the same goal, to quell the unrest in the city-state. But Todd sees it differently. After his army was attacked by the White Whale, Subaru and his remaining troops, whose clothing and mannerisms clearly did not belong to the locals, appeared in the city-state. Within minutes, the White Whale appeared. Under Subaru's call, the White Whales, which had been hovering in the air, landed in the city-states and began to launch attacks. Guided by his soldiers' instincts, Todd launched an attack on Subaru. The sudden explosion once again overturned Subaru, causing him to fall onto the oxcart. Subaru felt dizzy and then landed heavily on the ground. Cough cough cough, Subaru had already seen the exploding crystal once before during the Sloth raid after White Whale, but he never expected it to be used on him again this time. You bastard, you're quite the runner. You've made a complete mess of this place. Todd struck Subaru hard in the stomach with the back of the axe. We are not the enemy. Didn't you understand when I said to tell your little pet to stop? It's clear that Todd has no intention of negotiating with Subaru. Wait a minute. The gleaming axe was already in front of Subaru. Return by death activated. Chapter 139 Transfer. Return by death activated. Turn around. Move towards the city gate. Subaru, who had fought to the death in the city more than 10 times, finally gave up. Because of Todd's presence, Subaru had no choice but to try to lure the white whale out of the city. Got it, boss. White whale pushed the house down, and Subaru precisely dodged the flying bricks. Watch out behind you. Subaru then reminded the distracted Remington, we'll meet at the city gate. Rem, please be careful. The ox cart sped through the streets, and since the crowds were mostly gathered at the shelters and city gates, Subaru didn't need to worry about hurting anyone. Seemingly sensing that Subaru's location was shifting, the white whales also broke free from their predicament and flew towards Subaru's location. This location, Mitien. There will be an explosion on the left, go around it. Subaru accurately reported the trap Todd had set. The trap originally intended to ambush Subaru instantly turned into a smoke bomb to cover everyone's retreat, and Todd, who was in the distance, couldn't see the ox cart's movements at all. How dare he? How did this guy do that? Todd rushed over with his axe. Along the way, Subaru relied on his return by death and Mitien's driving skills to quickly avoid the obstacles. Boss, this is terrible. There are people everywhere in front of us. What are we going to do? Flop anxiously reminded Subaru that if White Whale came into the crowd, no one dared to imagine the consequences. Isn't the sidewalk still wide enough? We can't worry about that now, we'll just go through there, and I'll take care of the rest. Having no other choice but to listen to Subaru's advice, Mitien was now right behind them, and turning around at this point was not a realistic option. Phew, to be honest, I didn't want this either, but... Damn it, I am Fiona Argyle, the arrogance representative of which cult archbishops. Get out of my way. As the nemesis of which cult, Subaru knows which cult inside and out, let alone imitates it, although he finds it disgusting deep down. But at times like these, Subaru doesn't have that many choices. I really hope Fiona's reputation grows even more here. In everyone's eyes. White Whale suddenly appeared in the city-state, and within minutes, an ox cart summoned all the white whales that were still hovering in the air down. Immediately afterwards, the culprit drove the ox cart and his henchmen to the most crowded spot in the city. Witch cults are notorious wherever they go, especially since Fiona once roamed around Wallachia. Of course, no one doubted Subaru's words. Because the noisy crowd fell silent in an instant, because in the open area not far away, an ox cart was rushing wildly toward them. The black-haired man had a fierce look in his eyes, and black mist surged in from not far away like a flood, seemingly in response to the black-haired man's call. Woo chirp! Just as the crowd hesitated, White Whale broke through the black mist and rushed towards the black-haired man's location. I am Fiona Argyle, the arrogance representative of which cult archbishops. Get out of my way. Subaru didn't even have time to react before the crowded people dispersed in an instant. Subaru had been worried that someone might get hurt, but it seems he was overthinking it. The giant ice spikes shot towards the obstacles used to block the city gate, and the ox cart successfully passed through the city wall and arrived outside the city. The three white whales all increased their height and leaped directly over the towering city wall. Great job, boss. You did it. Flop shouted with joy under Subaru's command. We have led the monsters out of the city-state with almost no casualties. Wah! The white whale that had just left the city-state began to rise instantly, and Subaru and the others simply couldn't stop it in time. The defending army would not leave the city so easily. Finally, the white whale disappeared into the clouds. The ox cart didn't stop for long at the edge of the forest before Rem arrived. Rem was already a formidable fighter, and the city was in complete chaos. Therefore, by following the stench, we can find Subaru very quickly. Such words can really hurt a guy's self-esteem. As everyone was making repairs, rustling sounds came from the forest, and Healy and the others, who had been waiting nearby, came out. The village of Shudrak. Look, little sister. This is the people of Shudrak. What a major discovery. Flop chatted excitedly with Mitien. Oh, look, everyone's abs are really well defined. Compared to the carefree brother and sister, Subaru is quite different. You mean you knew all along that the monsters would move towards the city-states? Subaru was about to punch Abel in the face, but Abel just watched Subaru like it was a show. Isn't this entirely predictable? The routed Imperial army will definitely retreat to the nearest city-state, and the magical beasts will most likely follow them. Abel spoke arrogantly, but fortunately the chieftain of the people of Shudrak intervened, and my Jilhang stepped forward. Let's make this clear first, don't slap me in the face. Subaru naturally had no objections and punched Abel squarely in the stomach. This matter isn't over yet. It seems that the predicament in the city-state has left Subaru with considerable psychological trauma. At the very least, the master of the division's performance has made Subaru not want to see Todd again for the time being. These two are innocent merchants who were dragged into this in the city-state. It was with their help that we successfully lured away the invading monsters. Subaru explained to the crowd, but what I just did might have dragged them into this, and it won't be easy to explain away in the short term. Calling oneself a member of the witch cult within a city-state is no joke, especially considering Subaru has 3 white whales following him. Oh dear, the atmosphere seems rather quiet. This person is clearly the village representative. Mitien greeted everyone. There's someone over there who looks a lot like Rem. That must be Rem in different clothes. Is that so? I'm so sorry. Chapter 140, The Walking Nether. People of Shudrak village meeting room. In short, I think now is a good time to conquer Geralt. Abel was the first to express her thoughts. What do you mean by that? Subaru found the topic of Abel hard to understand, even though he had analyzed Abel's identity as the Wallachia emperor who had been ousted by internal forces. What I mean is to start a war with gunpowder, bloodshed, acts of death, fighting among armies, and the deaths of civilians. Do you understand? Abel made his intentions crystal clear, leaving Subaru no room for misinterpretation. I disagree. Subaru immediately objected. Although Subaru had been killed countless times by Todd of the Imperial Army, he was not so insane as to seek revenge on the completely unrelated people of Wallachia. And if it's a battle of attrition, we're completely at a disadvantage. Also, her position. First, it is not advisable to demoralize ourselves before anything even begins. However, what you said does make sense. Including you all, we only have a little over 100 people left. Therefore, I invite you all here for discussions. Abel answered Subaru's question. Furthermore, to be very certain there is no one around who you mentioned. Fiona didn't teleport. Subaru's eyes were full of hesitation, but Abel didn't seem to be joking. Even Majilhung, who was standing next to him, nodded in affirmation of Abel's statement. If White Whale is here, then Fiona must be here too. White Whale? It seems more like you're the mastermind behind them. Abel offered his thoughts. Rem. For a moment Subaru, clueless, asked Rem, who was standing beside him. While Miss Fiona does indeed have some connection to the White Whale, it's not accurate to assume that the White Whale. Isn't it a bit far-fetched to expect that Miss Fiona would actually show up? Pleiades. It got swallowed by the White Whale. Subaru's mind was immediately filled with all sorts of speculations. The White Whale could indeed change the world's perception of a person, but that was just deletion. Let me confirm first, which Fiona are you referring to? Miss Fiona Argyle is Lugnika's knight, Felix's sister, an excellent swordswoman. And has a certain peculiar quirk and a terrible sense of direction. What about witch cult? Subaru asked the most crucial question. What witch cult? Rem asked with a surprised look, the arrogance representative of which cult archbishops? That's right. Wasn't that a lie Subaru made up on the spot? Subaru was stunned for 2 seconds before he realized that the reason everyone was running away wasn't because of Fiona, but because of him, and the white whale behind him. Does that mean I've become the Archbishop of Sin? Subaru, belatedly realizing something, suddenly understood that it was now unlikely he could figure out what had happened on the tower. On the other side. Return by death, return by death, return by death, Fiona. What's wrong, Fiona? Maylie Portrout looked at Fiona with some surprise as she suddenly stopped. Fiona felt that the distance of just a few steps in front of her had never seemed so far before. It's nothing, I just feel like I'm in a maze. The Oni race has this kind of ability. Divine protection for architecture. By the way, why haven't the city-states noticed us? The white whale in the distance seemed to be attracted by something, but given that the city was still in a state of chaos, it wasn't a powerful figure making a move. Perhaps you're too flustered. White whale has been lured out of the city. Never mind, let's go into the city first. Fiona removed her hood, but it seemed the guards on the high wall didn't notice anyone's arrival. It's like a completely foreign city-state. Fiona and her companion entered the city without any apparent pressure, which surprised Fiona. Isn't this a male-oriented novel? Shouldn't it include some face-slapping and smug satisfaction plot points? It's omitted. Surely the author wasn't too lazy to write it. Although the city is still in chaos, the monsters have disappeared, and the city's security has quickly stabilized under the Imperial Army's reorganization. Everything started to move in a positive direction. Is there anything you'd like to eat? Fiona doesn't have a specific target yet. Once White Whale appears, things will escalate, and high-level Imperial forces will arrive soon. Maylie Portrout also pointed without hesitation to a newly set-up stall in the distance, which looked like some kind of fruit skewer snack, and the syrup on it was obviously sweet. Wait here for me, I'll go buy it. Fiona placed the Maylie Portrout on a raised platform, and then planned to walk through the crowd to the other end of the street. How much is this? Seeing Fiona's sudden appearance startled me, just like seeing Subaru's Apple stand owner. I'm so sorry, miss. I must have been distracted and didn't notice you. Such a big mess happened not long ago. You don't need to go to so much trouble. Before the vendor could react, Fiona took 2 skewers of snacks and casually tossed a handful of gold nuggets onto the vendor's table. Where is everyone? Who was I just talking to? However, Fiona didn't notice this. After buying the snacks, Fiona planned to take Maylie Portrout to find a hotel to stay in first. The girl Fiona had just placed on the high platform was looking blankly at the bustling street, seemingly searching for something. Fiona. Open panel. Fiona started checking her dashboard. Without much doubt, this kind of problem was most likely Pandora doing something good. Asterisk stealth-based divine protection asterisk, they are extremely easy to ignore or forget, unless they are close by or the divine protector actively contacts them. Should this kind of divine protection really appear in a novel like this? Isn't that something only a pervert would need? Fiona tried to brush off this divine protection, but Pandora just happened to bypass Fiona's protection. This is a positive divine protection that is not within Fiona's scope of attention. Maylie Portrout. Maylie Portrout, looking completely bewildered, jumped up in fright, suggesting that divine protection is indeed not very friendly to timid people. Then, let's go find a hotel first. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.